Cornell University in the state of New York is suspending enrollment and study for students that participate in campus protests demanding an end to Israel's war on Gaza. The school says that this is because students set up an encampment which they did not seek permission for. Across many American universities, student protesters have set up encampments on their campuses and are calling for their universities to withdraw investment from companies with links to the Israeli military. Let's speak now to Nick Wilson. He's a second-year undergraduate student at Cornell University and a protest organizer with the Coalition for Mutual Liberation. He joins us now live from Ithaca. Many thanks for your time today. You were suspended, I believe, from Cornell 2 days ago for protesting. Can you tell us what happened?
Yes, that's correct. Administration actually didn't even send out representatives to notify us that we had been suspended. I was at our encampment on the Arts Quad. It's a lively community environment, lots of students learning from one another, creating art together. And suddenly I had several of my fellow organizers run up to me and ask me to check my email when I was notified that I had been suspended. Cornell's suspended a total of 4 students so far. People that they perceive to be public faces of the movement or sort of core organizers in an attempt to bring down our movement.
I believe they did offer you an alternative location to protest, but you declined, and that was actually the reason for your suspension.
Yes, that's right. Administration initially approached us and asked us to move from the Arts Quad, which is the most central location on campus and the best populated location on campus, somewhere most students walk through on a normal school day, to a much more secluded area in another area of campus. We had severe safety concerns about that area. It only had 2 points of entry and exit, so we were concerned about students being able to come and go freely. And it's also built onto a slope, so it would have been significantly more difficult to pitch tents and camp overnight there.
You are a member of the student team that was negotiating with administrators. Can I ask what you and your fellow students were demanding, and what is the status of negotiations now?
Yes, I was on a team of 8 negotiators that were nominated by our peers in the encampment to represent the rest of the group. We make decisions democratically as a whole, but that was the group that was chosen to go speak with administration. Of those 8, 3 students on the negotiation team have been suspended. It's our belief that those students were targeted because we're the students that they perceive to be leaders. I think that's a real misunderstanding of the movement, which is why these suspensions have failed to prevent the encampment and actually grown our numbers based on the community outrage that they spurred. Our core demands center around divestment from the genocide that's ongoing in Gaza. Cornell has massive investments in 10 weapons manufacturers, as well as partnership with weapons manufacturer Technion, through which Cornell directly facilitates their research and development of advanced weapon systems for the IDF. Technion has sponsored a lot of programs, including the creation of the unmanned D9 bulldozer, which has been used to bulldoze the homes of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians. So we're calling for an end to Cornell's role in actively facilitating the genocide in Gaza.
I think it's probably fair to say that not all students at Cornell or other universities feel the way you do. What do you say to those that see these protests as disrupting their learning? They just want things to go back to normal, to graduate and so on.
Well, here at Cornell, we've actually got pretty decent proof that a lot of students think this way. We recently held a referendum on our divestment demands. Almost 50% of students turned out, and nearly 70% of students voted yes on the question to divest from those weapons manufacturers. 50% of students is a really impressive number for Cornell's campus, which is ordinarily quite apolitical. In our previous student government election, only 15% of students elected to vote. So very recently, the Cornell community has come out in full support, I believe, of the divestment demand. Many students perceive what's going on in Gaza, the ongoing genocide, as a real moral atrocity, and we see our university's role as something that's completely reprehensible. So Cornell students, I think, across the board are standing up in favor of divestment because we believe it's a moral imperative, given that our tuition money is funding genocide.
And what about you? Why are you protesting? I mean, I understand your suspension has meant you've been withdrawn from all your current courses. You may not even receive any credit for those courses. You've not been permitted to be on campus. Why is this cause important to you?
Yeah, it's certainly a major sacrifice for all of the students that have decided to take the risk. My suspension was rather arbitrary. I think I was one of the people that was most visible to administration, and that's why they singled me out for suspension. But there are a lot of students out there that have taken the same risks and that are continuing every day to join our encampment and take the same risks. And I think that's because of the national student movement that's sweeping our country right now, of students saying that something that's more important than our academic futures or even our future careers is preventing an ongoing genocide. There's a moral question here that I think is moving enough to students that they're willing to put quite a lot on the line in order to object to that. And for us, it seems like the rational thing to do. There are short-term interests for us, but in the long term, we want to be able to tell our children and our grandchildren that as the genocide was happening, we were standing up to object to it and materially putting ourselves in the way of, our university's active support for that.
Okay, Nick, thank you for your time. Nick Wilson, a second-year undergraduate student at Cornell University.
Just after dawn on October 7th, 2023, Palestinian fighters belonging to the group Hamas broke out of the besieged Gaza Strip. After blowing through Israel's high-tech fence, they attacked several of the surrounding military bases and overran them, before moving on to Israeli communities near the border. At least 1,300 Israelis were killed and dozens were captured and taken into Gaza to be used in a future prisoner swap. Many of the dead were deemed civilians under international law, and children were also among those killed. Many governments have rallied behind Israel, which has already bombarded Gaza with airstrikes, flattening neighborhoods and killing at least 1,900 Palestinians at the time of this recording. Israel has also cut off water, electricity, fuel, and food to the people there and declared a total siege. So why did Hamas attack Israel? A lot of the condemnation of the Hamas attack has called it unprovoked. But is that accurate? Now, the purpose here isn't to condone or justify it. It's to understand why it happened, because if we don't, then it's more likely that we'll see this happening over and over again. While things may have been calm and normal for Israelis until then, for Palestinians, daily life was intolerable pain. In fact, for 16 years, Gaza has been under an Israeli siege so severe that it's often called the world's largest open-air prison. The Secretary General of the United Nations has described Gaza as hell on earth. And way back in 2012, the UN warned that if Israel's policies in Gaza didn't change, this tiny strip of land that's one of the most densely populated places on earth would become unfit for human living by 2020. It's now 2023. And in fact, analysts who had been paying attention were trying to sound the alarm, that things were getting worse, that the status quo was getting more and more untenable, that an explosion was inevitable. The siege began when Hamas took over Gaza in 2007, a year after winning the Palestinian Authority elections. You see, Hamas was founded in Gaza in the late 1980s, 20 years into Israel's occupation of the territory. The group has a military wing, but it's also a political party. Its stated goal is to liberate all of Palestine and the return of Palestinian refugees exiled during Israel's founding in 1948. And it has always said that the only way to achieve that goal is to fight. For the 2.3 million Palestinians who live in Gaza, the 16-year siege means that Israel controls basically everything about their lives, and it has created a humanitarian catastrophe for them. The economy is devastated because Israel limits Gaza's trade with the outside world, leaving most of the population unemployed. The health sector has also been in crisis, with medicines frequently running out and patients denied Israeli permits to leave for life-saving healthcare. And electricity only lasts a few hours a day because Israel limits the amount of fuel let into Gaza. At one point, official documents showed that Israel calculated the number of calories allowed into Gaza, just enough to keep people from starving. Nearly half of Gaza's population is under 18. That means most of the people living there have never been able to leave Gaza. They've never stepped foot in Jerusalem or met a fellow Palestinian from the occupied West Bank. And they've survived several major attacks, leaving them with unimaginable trauma. Tens of thousands of homes and buildings were targeted and destroyed by Israel during these assaults, which left thousands of Palestinians dead. For example, in the summer of 2014 alone, at least 2,100 Palestinians, including at least 500 children, were killed by Israeli bombardment. In that conflict, 72 Israelis were killed, 66 of them soldiers. Despite some international criticism, Israel has never faced serious calls to end its siege on Gaza. In 2018, tens of thousands of Gazans tried to break the siege by marching non-violently onto the boundary fence with Israel every Friday for almost 2 years. They were met with gunfire. For weeks, Israeli soldiers shot at those attempting to get close, resulting in hundreds of deaths and thousands of injuries, including medics and journalists. Even before Hamas took control of Gaza, Israel had subjected the territory to a closure since the 1990s. This meant that Palestinians could rarely enter or exit Gaza unless they had a rare Israeli permit. This policy is part of a larger Israeli military occupation of Gaza and the West Bank that's now lasted more than half a century. Multiple human rights groups around the world have found that Israel actually runs a system of apartheid with separate laws for Israelis and Palestinians. Ultimately, this means that Israel is a state that, based on ethnicity, denies citizenship and rights to the millions of people over which it rules, i.e., the Palestinians. Under international law, Israel's occupation, which is now in its 56th year, is illegal, and apartheid is a crime against humanity. Meanwhile, the occupied West Bank is ruled by Hamas's political rival, the Palestinian Authority, which rejects confrontation with Israel, hoping to end the occupation through US-led peace talks. But since those peace talks began 30 years ago, Israel has only expanded its illegal settlements on Palestinian land, and the occupation has become more entrenched. Time and time again, Palestinians have seen that negotiations, peaceful marches, and other non-violent means of protests have not gotten them any closer to achieving freedom and rights. In the meantime, the overall situation for Palestinians living under Israel's occupation has steadily gotten worse. The current Netanyahu government, the most right-wing and anti-Arab in Israel's history, includes leaders who have openly called for the renewed ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and the destruction of entire Palestinian towns. In 2023 alone, they've incited several attacks on Palestinian villages in the West Bank, attacks that even Israeli observers referred to as pogroms, referring to the anti-Semitic rampages suffered by Jews in Eastern Europe. Armed Israeli settlers smashed homes, burned cars, and set fire to fields. When Palestinians tried to defend their property, Israeli forces shot at them, both with live fire and rubber-coated bullets, as well as tear gas. Israeli politicians and settlers have also repeatedly entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam, where Israeli forces have attacked Palestinian worshippers. By the way, they've been open about their attempts to destroy the mosque and build a new Jewish temple atop it. And the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli soldiers and settlers in the West Bank hit a 20-year high in 2023. The scale of the Hamas attack was unprecedented in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While dis and misinformation has spread widely in the aftermath about precisely what happened, there's no doubt that Israeli civilians were targeted. It's important to remember that Israel has one of the best equipped militaries in the world and the backing of many Western governments. That's why it's always been able to inflict far more death on Palestinians than vice versa. This has been the case ever since the state was founded in 1948, when it used that force to expel most Palestinians from their homes in what became Israel. In fact, around 2/3 of people who live in Gaza are refugees or their descendants. Many of them come from towns and villages just across the boundary fence. Some of those villages, now with Hebrew names and Israeli residents, were among the areas where Hamas fighters entered and attacked. Back in Gaza, things look apocalyptic. Israel's defense minister has ordered fuel, electricity, and even water to be cut off, saying his government is dealing with, quote, human beasts. The only power plant in Gaza has officially run out of fuel, leaving 2.3 million people with no electricity and in the dark. With fighter jets, artillery, and warships under his command, it's expected that the already massive Palestinian death toll is only going to climb. Also, keep in mind that Gaza is under a blockade, which means when the bombs drop, Palestinians are trapped there with nowhere to flee and no bomb shelters to go to. Israel had previously launched large-scale wars against Hamas in Gaza in 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021 with the stated goal of stopping Hamas. But while these wars inflicted catastrophic damage on Gaza's civilian population and infrastructure, they clearly did not stop Hamas. A military solution has not worked. Israeli journalist Gideon Levy just wrote in Haaretz, Israel can't imprison 2 million Gazans without paying a cruel price. And Levy is onto something. What's missing in all of this context is the root cause of it all, a deeply violent apartheid system and an occupation that robs Palestinians of their land, freedom, and right to self-determination. Meanwhile, the world does little to push Israel to end this system, and instead, often provides it with the aid and cover to maintain it instead. To find out how Israel subjugates Palestinians under its apartheid system and more on how Israel came to be, watch these explainers from AJ Plus next.
Kindling the fight against anti-Semitism on all its campuses. We will not succumb to their intimidation. And soon, there will be no fear amongst Jewish streets. We will walk with our head held high, our yarmulke on our head, our Maccabee necklaces out. And we will all say, Am Israel!
Yeah, show your faces, you rats. You deserve to be under tunnel.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
In October 2021, about 1,000 police officers attended a private police training conference in Atlantic City. What we found was really disturbing.
I'm not sure the guy who's recording you like, oh, I am not a citizen of the United States under Act 12, 6. Shut the up, right? About to get pepper sprayed, tased, windows broken out, mother.
Welcome back to the Civil Rights Lawyer channel. In this video, we are going to talk about this report that came out in New Jersey from the acting comptroller that looked into this private law enforcement training firm, training approximately 25,000 to 30,000 cops nationally on an annual basis. Well, they investigated this one particular course being taught, the Street Cop Conference in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Almost 1,000 police officers showed up to be trained. And now, according to the Attorney General of New Jersey, all of these officers have to be retrained because there were problems.
I've made it very clear to all 38,000 sworn officers and their leadership that no one should be attending street cop training.
Before we get into the specifics of what they taught that was wrong, legally speaking, here's a few of the greatest hits from the conference.
I don't want a hero's exit. I don't want to fucking die at like 91 with hookers and cocaine around me, you know? So, hey, we watched your body cam videos. We don't think you got a voluntary consent. Yeah, here's 7 pieces of case law, fuckhead. Stop trying to back the 19-year-old dispatcher.
I would be remiss if I didn't remind you or let you know that I have a 3-inch dick.
I'm not the one with a 1-inch dick.
I watched this car come off the highway, and I fucked the shit out of the female driver. She doesn't want to fuck me back, though.
And when I began to research the guys involved in teaching these cops, it's no wonder why they now have to be retrained. Look at this one in particular. This was something he said during this conference.
In the South, it's the Wild Wild West, South, wherever. You don't believe me? Run from Georgia State Patrol. Run from me. Somewhere along the chase becomes neither confirm or deny there's some videos out there with me doing just that.
Obviously, what is the first thing that I went and did when I heard him say that? I searched for the video. Check this out from just a few months ago.
The first on the news at 6 o'clock, a Reserve West Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's deputy who shot into the back of a fleeing car is facing charges tonight.
Sean Pardazzi was fired in February, months after the initial incident took place. He's now facing charges of illegal discharge of a firearm and obstruction of justice.
Vehicle in park.
And what about the main dude? Well, I looked him up also, Dennis Benino. He's the one who said he was going to tase the guy for filming him.
Shut the fuck up, right? About to get pepper sprayed and fucking tased. Windows broken out, motherfucker.
Well, on Street Cop Training's website, he has this bio of himself, where he says that he worked in one of New Jersey's largest municipalities in 2005. He has received multiple awards, including but not limited to life-saving, meritorious service, Mayor's Award for Excellence in Public Service, several letters of recognition, leadership awards, and certificates of appreciation from several law enforcement organizations, and he now leads one of the fastest growing LEO education companies in the country. But CBS News had this headline about him. CBS New York investigates controversial police trainer was disciplined for alleged racial slur, other incidents. They ask, how did a former New Jersey police officer who was disciplined 3 times in a period of 5 years go on to train thousands of officers while charging local governments thousands of dollars? This is the same guy.
CBS News discovered the founder of Street Cop, Dennis Benino, was a street cop himself in Woodbridge Township, New Jersey. Public records revealed Benino was disciplined by the department 3 times in 5 years. In 2015, 3 women accused him of using excessive force and racial bias. Woodbridge Township paid $50,000 taxpayer dollars to settle before it went to trial. Benino never admitted wrongdoing. Woodbridge police say he retired from the department at age 33, weeks after that lawsuit was filed. Then he went on to create Street Cop.
So there's some of the background on likely why this training is problematic. But looking back at Mr. Benino's bio, he ends it by saying his personal mission is to ensure the safety of law enforcement personnel, citizens of the world, and to ensure police officers are well-versed in understanding and abiding by the Constitution of the United States.
We investigated this 6-day conference hosted by a private company called Street Cop Training. Instructors taught unconstitutional policing practices, teaching officers to stop motorists without a lawful basis and to illegally prolong traffic stops.
Have a day where you go out and go, people pull over 20 people in a row for the sole purpose of asking them a series of questions and make up your own questions. Something as simple as, hey, how you doing? Where you come from? You know, hey, where you going? Be real friendly about all stuff and just see how people answer questions. You will learn general baseline.
So that was Officer Tommy Brooks of the Boston, Massachusetts Police Department explaining his methodology for stopping motorists. The only problem is That's unconstitutional, what he's saying. He's going to stop just the first 20 cars. Police are not allowed to randomly stop people for no reason. They are also not allowed to stop a person or a car for arbitrary reasons or based on an inarticulate hunch or gut feeling that the driver or passenger might be engaged in criminal activity. Basic Constitutional Law 101.
On Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Students at Columbia University here in New York held an emergency protest Wednesday over the school's response to an attack on members of Columbia University Apartheid Divest at a rally on campus last Friday. Police are now investigating how pro-Palestinian students were sprayed with a hazardous, foul-smelling chemical at Friday's protest, including members of Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace, and Jews for Ceasefire. 8 students were reportedly hospitalized or seeking medical attention. Organizers allege the attack was carried out by 2 students who are former members of the Israeli military, the IDF, using a chemical weapon known as skunk that soldiers also deploy on Palestinians. A Palestinian-American student named Layla described the attack she says has left her traumatized in an interview with the podcast The Robust Opposition.
I remember just smelling this smell in the air, and it was just atrocious. I was like, oh my gosh, like it smells like somebody died. Like, what is this smell? And then at first I was like, okay, maybe I stepped in some dog poop. Like maybe I'm just tired. I tried to like kind of ignore it for a little bit. But then after the protest, when the protest was done, I just noticed how bad I felt. I felt so sick. I felt fatigued. I was nauseous. I had a really bad headache. And I was like, something is going on here. I'm not sure what, but something is going on here. And then I was getting texts and calls from my friends, and they were like, did you smell that smell? Or my friend was like, oh my gosh, I threw up like 3 times. Like, I don't know what is wrong with me. So when this is used on Palestinians in the West Bank, like, for example, it's been used on peaceful protesters there. It's been used on shopkeepers and merchants. So like if a merchant gets their produce sprayed with skunk, they have to throw it all out just because of how bad it stinks. It felt like for a while, like the university like didn't believe us. Like I told them about it, and it's like my concerns weren't really being taken seriously. And it wasn't until students started posting photos of themselves being hospitalized and tagging the university, being like, at Columbia, like we're like they started taking it seriously.
That's Palestinian-American Columbia University student Layla describing Friday's attack on her, as well as other students who were part of a protest. No arrests have been made yet, but the school now says it's banned the suspects from campus while law enforcement investigates.
We are joined now from the Columbia encampment by first-year law student and Columbia undergrad graduate, Safia Southey. Safia, thank you so mumuch for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it. So when I talked to you a couple of days ago, or whenever that was, about coming on to join the show, you were out picking up Seder supplies. Can you tell us a little bit about how Seder went there at the encampment?
Yeah, it was honestly one of the most inspiring experiences I've had, and not a Seder like anything else. We had dozens and dozens of students gathered around on the floor. It was my first outdoor Seder, and it was really beautiful, mostly led by Jewish Voice for Peace here on campus. We had a specialized Haggadah talking about the concepts of liberation, and it was just a very wonderful multicultural moment. Nearly everybody on campus or everybody at the camp was there and shared in the moment. So very grateful to have that.
Passover Seder, or in American, Seders, come in many forms, from those filled with skits to those lasting all night to those rushed through in an effort to get to the food. Whatever your Seder, there are some symbols and customs you'll see most of the time. In the middle of the table, there's wine, a stack of matzah, and a cup of wine for Elijah the prophet, who's said to visit every seder. Additionally, there's the seder plate. It can be anything from a fancy ceramic piece imported from Israel to a makeshift number hacked together from picnicware. On the seder plate, a shank bone, egg, bitter herb, charoset, karpas, and a piece of lettuce. Each thing symbolizes a different aspect of Passover. Also, everyone has a Haggadah, the book or printouts that guides you through the Seder. There are tons of different Haggadahs. Minimal and elaborate, you can get them in Hebrew, English, or both, with any kind of commentary you like, from feminist to environmental to Hasidic to political. There are versions for kids, for interfaith groups, and for activists. And of course, people remix the tradition every which way to make it their own. Seder literally translates to order, so let's talk about that. There's a few traditions to start. Blessing the wine, washing your hands, dipping veggies into salt water, and then breaking the middle matzah. Half of it, called the afikoman, gets hidden surreptitiously. Then comes the main event, the telling of the Exodus from Egypt. Or more accurately, the main event is an interactive reading of rabbinical discussions about how to remember the Exodus. When the Seder was put together, the rabbis assumed everyone going in knew the story. So it was silly to just retell it. Instead, they went deeper, and in doing so, created a holiday that is about memory. How do people today relate to these themes of liberation and redemption?
And can you tell us just a little bit about the logistics of the encampment? How many people are there right now? You guys are overnight in tents. How are you getting food? What's your life like? Basically, we get a good, I think, visual of it, which we appreciate a lot. But what's your life like right now in the encampment?
Yeah, so after the first encampment was kind of dismembered on Wednesday, a bunch of students jumped over to the West Lawn of Columbia, and we've been here since Thursday. So students are here overnight. At the very beginning, we weren't allowed to have tents. So we were sleeping on the ground, on tarps in the rain, which was not very fun. We now have tents, which is wonderful. We have probably about 50 students here right now. There was supposed to be a police raid at 8 a.m. this morning, so we have fewer students than we usually do. Usually there's about 200. A lot of them sleeping over here. We have food from donations, and so it's been a really wonderful experience to watch people come in. There's a system of runners who come and collect food from all over, and we have a food table abundance, and we have water supplies, a lot of students taking care of us. It's a very community-driven place where everybody just kind of chips in whatever they can in terms of like labor and support.
And so President Biden recently called the protest that you're a part of flatly anti-Semitic. The Secretary of Education said that he's launching a Title, was it 9? What's the title? Whatever title they're using to investigate Columbia, basically for anti-Semitism. What was your reaction? What was your reaction in the camp to that national attention and to that allegation? Yeah, I am really disappointed and horrified at that idea. I mean, I'm a Jewish student here. We have a huge number of Jewish students who we have the Shabbat service and a Havdalah service, and obviously a huge Seder. It's part of our strict Columbia, community guidelines here in the encampment that we accept everybody if they're here and in support of the cause. There have been anti-Semitic incidents that have happened outside of the campus gates, usually by individuals or groups that are not aligned with the people who have organized the encampment, or at least the message is not aligned. And so while I do understand why some Jewish students on campus feel threatened in some capacity, the bumping that in with the encampment I find to be really disheartening, given the fact that this is such a accepting place that has welcomed me and everybody else. And honestly, I find that the protests and the anti-Semitic comments and the focus on that has been a complete distraction from why we are here and the actual message of divestment and transparency and support for Palestinian people that this camp stands for, especially because it is such a welcoming environment that I am very grateful to be a part of.
Yeah, I think it's important that you acknowledged some of the stuff that's been, as you say, off message, because, there was that Al-Qassam's next target sign that was horrific. But, free speech is, there was also the one that said, let it be known. That was the Al-Aqsa flood that put the global intifada back on the table again, a speaker. Yeah. So that stuff is it's important, though, to support free speech when it's really hard. And I guess I would just say, probably some of your fellow Jewish students on campus who are on the other side of this might say, are you guys cracking down hard enough on those people who are off message? What would you say to that? What would you say to them if they were in front of you and said, you should be cracking down harder on the people who are veering off message? I imagine you've done some of that.
Yeah, I will say that it's hard to crack down on people when they are individuals and physically outside the bounds of the school. So we are all in this inner space, and a lot of the idea is like taking up this space on campus. And so the idea of like going outside and policing individual people for messages is firstly impossible. Second of all, UAD, the divestment group, along with the other organizing groups, have actively tried to address and go against the idea of anti-Semitism, asking groups outside to stop using this kind of rhetoric. The girl with the Al-Aqsa sign was not a Columbia student. We have no idea how she got here. I have not known of a single incident of a Columbia student or somebody in the encampment using such language. And so while there has been an active effort to kind of quash this kind of rhetoric, it's very, very, very difficult. Somebody's coming and recording. And so it happens quite often here. So yeah, so we have been trying to also like tell Jewish students that they're welcome to come with the like seders and services and things like that. We are trying to make this as welcoming a space as possible, and ask those groups to really make sure that they are acting in line with the overall message without it being a distraction to what we're here standing for.
One of the big controversies nationally, and Piers Morgan played a role in this, but even without Piers Morgan, I think you still would have had this quote unquote stabbed in the eye controversy that went around. If we could play E4 here, just put this VO up. A student who turns out to be kind of a right-wing provocateur. She had previously gone viral like a year or two ago, complaining about Israeli couscous. So that's the flag incidents that you guys just saw. It's basically a toy little flag that the person is waving as they're walking through. The alleged victim said that she had been stabbed in the eye and sent fear kind of coursing through Jewish communities around the country. The video emerged finally last night, showing that if she was hit at all, it was a grazing by a kind of rounded ball at the end of a toy flag, and that clearly, because she's been on television, clearly did no damage. I'm curious what the encampment felt when they initially heard that story, and also, yes, to Emily's point, what are you guys doing to try to control the message and control the narrative? Because now this has become a kind of international spectacle that is a kind of a competition for the narrative.
Yeah, I think that there is a sense of horror, firstly, at the idea of somebody who was kind of on our side, quote unquote, perpetrating such behavior, but also the idea that incidents get blown out of proportion is not rare. We have a lot of students who are counter-protesters who try to come in, who try to film our faces and change the narrative a lot or take things out of context. We have strict policies here not to interact with counter-protesters because we understand that pretty much anything that we do will often be misconstrued or taken out of context. And so, I mean, our main policy is to not encourage that, not give anybody any fuel, but then also to really not address it for the most part. I think that we try to work to show it with our actions rather than trying to control a certain message, which we have found to be inadequate or futile for the most part. There's so many people that every single thing we say will get used in some capacity. And we do have a lot of instigators here who try to come, who try to video us and change the narrative. And so all we can do is kind of take a step back and hope that the actual message gets through.
Real Jews, Zionists. Real Jews, Zionists.
I'm a Jewish student at Columbia. When we talk about anti-Semitism on campus, that's taking the spotlight away from Gaza, away from Palestine, and the Palestinian students on campus, and putting it back onto me. I am perfectly safe here, and this has all been a distraction because they don't want us talking about the non-stop massacre of Gaza, of Palestinian civilians being taken out by the IDF. I grew up being taught that Israel was an important part of my Jewish identity, and part of being a Jew was supporting Israel. I was raised Zionist, and then I met a Palestinian for the first time and heard their perspective, and was able to realize that I was on the wrong side of this, that I'd been taught the wrong side of this. To me, calling in the police was an act of desperation. They know where the students stand. They saw the students come together to support their suspended and arrested friends. We see that other universities are following in our footsteps, and we welcome them. We just want to make sure that they do it in solidarity with Gaza and with Palestine, and that the focus is not on us. But we hope that this can be an important step in the liberation of Palestine and an end to the occupation and an end to the genocide.
I can't be a Zionist. No way. It's such an injustice, such a cruelty, such extortion. I mean, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, a lot of Israelis were not so ardent Zionists. They've become more ardent. I was brainwashed as a youngster. I was a Zionist. I was proud of Israel. I had to, you know, educate myself. Someone suggested I read a book. I don't remember now what it was, but it told about Shaba and Shatila, and you know, and other things about what was happening. And I realized, you know, I can't be a Zionist. No way. It's such an injustice, such a cruelty, such extortion. I mean, you know, the Holocaust was real, and anti-Semitism is real, but it doesn't give the Jews the right to then be the oppressor. It breaks my heart.
I noticed your sign. Are you Jewish?
Yeah.
Are you self-hating?
No.
No? How come you're supporting these people and not Israel?
Because it's a genocide, and I'm against genocide.
What do you think of what Israel is committing, and especially when they do these atrocities and claim to do it in the name of Jews around the world?
But it's not in the name of Judaism, it's in the name of Zionism. It has nothing to do with us. Our values are to stop genocide. Never again has always meant never again for everyone in the world.
How does it make you feel as a Zionist, say anti-Zionism equal anti-Semitism?
They're using anti-Semitism, that word, to weaponize genocide. Holocaust survivors are being used, and this genocide for me is no different from the Holocaust that took place, and it has to stop. People who are doing this, they're psychopaths. They're the same as any Nazi because they're dehumanizing people, just like was done in the past, and it has been going on for 75 years, and we never learned in our Jewish communities about the Nakba. We never even heard of it. We were told that the Zionists bought the land, were given the land, the Zionists rescued the land, and I'm so sorry.
God bless you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I've never felt as a Jew that I've ever had any racism against me. Very privileged minority Jews are, and we're not under threat at all. How the Palestinian people can confront this with so much grace and so much kindness to all people, it's a shaming for all of us.
Free, free.
Palestine!
Free, free.
Palestine!
God bless you.
Hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah. Are you uncomfortable with the fact that so many here in Brooklyn are opposing Israel's policies?
It's just unbelievable that Israel's PR managed to make so many believe that being Jewish is synonymous with Israel. It's just not true. Judaism is a religion. Israel is a political entity created in 1948 by people who cared zero of Judaism. In our community alone, there are over 200 synagogues that officially denounce Israel as Jewish state.
These are not the same thing. Jewish usually refers to someone's ancestry, but can also refer to people who follow the religion of Judaism. Israeli is citizenship from the country of Israel, whose government was created in 1948 with the help of Britain and other people like Sam Zimuri, the founder of Chiquita. And Zionism is support for Israel's ongoing colonization of the Palestinians for the benefit of Jewish Israelis that live there or have moved there. However, Zionists may not always be aware of the war crimes that Israel commits or the colonization that was part of the creation of Israel. So they may see Zionism as simply support for a country that is willing to accept Jewish people from all over the world and that is led primarily by Jewish people, in this case Israel. Not all Jewish people follow Judaism, and not all people who follow Judaism have Jewish ancestry. For example, Benjamin Netanyahu himself is Jewish and Israeli, but he is an atheist. Similarly, not all Israelis are Jewish in ancestry or religion. 21% of Israel is Arabic in ancestry. Not all Jewish people are Zionists. In fact, some of the most famous anti-Zionists are Jewish in ancestry, like Gabor Mate, Norman Finkelstein, Noam Chomsky, and even Albert Einstein. There are also Zionists who do not have Jewish ancestry, like many politicians who are funded and supported by AIPAC and the Jewish Federation of LA. Majority of people with Jewish ancestry outside of Israel had ancestors who left the Middle East hundreds of years ago, and some even more than 1,000 years ago. Israel allows them to obtain Israeli citizenship, but does not allow this for Palestinians even if they were displaced only 1 generation ago. Many Jewish Israelis are people who were born in the USA from places like New York or LA, but who moved into the literal homes that they personally stole from Palestinians, as can be seen in many videos, with support from the Israeli Defense Force. Although there are many Israelis who are Zionists and have even served in the IDF, because of the human rights abuses, there are many Israelis who are no longer Zionist, like Miko Pele.
Yesterday, Christian nationalists organized a pro-Israel rally outside the gates of Columbia. Leading the rally was Sean Foyt, don't know how to pronounce this, a white supremacist who wants all Jews to convert to Christianity. Video footage of white supremacists storming and climbing Columbia's front gates is available online. This is the 2nd day in a row that Columbia was beset by pro-Israel white supremacists after Gavin McInnes, the leader of fascist insurrectionary group the Proud Boys, appeared on campus Wednesday. White supremacists and Christian nationalists have been invigorated by our encampment because they see that we are a multiracial coalition composed of primarily black, brown, and Jewish students, everything they hate. We want to reiterate that as a movement, we stand against all forms of hate and bigotry.
We're also concerned about rumors that Columbia will move their students out of the dorms before the end of the semester to preempt the longevity of this movement, to preempt the longevity of this encampment. Again, it is in our best interest to reach an agreement before commencement because we want students and families to be able to celebrate this milestone together on this campus. Though there are parties within the administration who would like to see negotiations fail, again, we are reiterating that successful negotiations are the only viable option to end this encampment.
Our encampment here at Columbia and encampments everywhere around the country are part of a larger movement for Palestinian liberation. We are a decolonial movement filled with people of all faiths, ethnicities, and walks of life. Our protesters' negotiations with Columbia are ongoing. As a reminder, Quad organizers have 3 demands. 1. Divest all finances, including the endowment, from corporations that profit from Israeli apartheid, genocide, and occupation in Palestine. 2. Complete transparency for all of Columbia's financial investments. 3. Amnesty for all students and faculty disciplined or fired in the movement for Palestinian liberation. Our negotiation team has been working round the clock to keep an open line of dialogue with Columbia. The university had previously threatened us with the National Guard and NYPD, severing talks between student protesters and the Columbia administration. From the beginning, our movement has peacefully acted in service of our demands, and we believe Columbia has reacted in unconscionable ways. Yesterday, Palestinians and allied students with Palestine Legal filed a federal civil rights complaint against Columbia University, demanding an investigation into Columbia University's discriminatory treatment of Palestinian students and their allies, after over 100 students who the NYPD has acknowledged to have been, quote, totally nonviolent, were arrested by police in riot gear. The complaint alleges that, for more than 6 months, Palestinian students, Arabs, Muslims, students perceived to be Palestinian, and students associated with or advocating for Palestinians have been the target of extreme anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and Islamophobic harassment, including receiving multiple death threats, being harassed for wearing keffiyehs or hijabs, doxxed, stereotyped, being treated differently by high-ranking administrators, including Columbia University President Manoush Shafiq, being attacked with a chemical agent that led to at least 10 students requiring hospitalization and dozens of others seeking medical attention, and more. You can read the full complaint on the Palestine Legal website.
You can have all the money in your hands, all the possessions anyone can ever have, but it's all worthless treasure. True worth is only measured not by what you got, but what you got in your heart. You can have everything, but what does it mean? It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. You can't just talk the talk, you got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you. And I stand up for you. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. You do the best that you can do. Then you can look in the mirror, proud of who's looking back at you. Define the life you're living, not by what you take, but what you're giving. And if you bet on love, there's no way you'll ever lose. Take a stand, make a stand for what's right. It's always worth the fight. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. You can't just talk the talk, you got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you, self-respect, dignity. If that's all you got, then you got all you need. And without that, you don't have a thing. Oh, no, no.
Rise up, love, lift your hands. I stand with you cause I understand. Ain't here to judge, just to take a stand. The greater plan's the creator's plan. Let's all rise like the day began. Reach out and touch with the Savior's hand. On rock we stand like it's native land. Let the ways of love be the ways of man.
If you don't stand for something, you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you. Yeah, I stand up for you.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني